You are now tuned in to the frequency that lives between the tracking lines, where roundhouse kicks echo through the void, and every movie is either a cult classic or a glorious train wreck waiting to be worshipped. This is the BAMF Podcast. I'm Sideburnzombie, a former video store clerk, current undead broadcast host, and leader of the Rewind cult. Each week, I'll be here broadcasting straight from the neon-soaked bunker of analog truth. We're talking forgotten action films, cursed horror tapes, kung fu masterpieces, and those straight-to-video disasters that somehow defined our childhoods. You want segments? Yeah, we got those. We have the cult pick of the week. That's where I'll break down one badass movie that just rewired my entire brain. We have the Static Zone. This is a place for hot takes, conspiracy theories, and unsolicited rants about VHSs, Laserdiscs, DVDs, Blu-rays, 4Ks, anything that was on any kind of physical media. And then we have the Late Fee Confessional. This is where I will ask you to call in, send in letters, comment on these videos, and we'll read them here on the air. And always, just the unexpected, pure chaos that comes from the BAMF Podcast. If you like your cinema cracked, culty, and a little bit cursed, welcome home, Rewind Junkie. Just remember, you always need to be kind and rewind. But remember, you need to rewind and be kind. Just something that we say here, and just those things that I will constantly keep saying to you. So tune in each week for the BAMF Podcast every Friday, right here. All right, you rewind junkies, let's talk toxic, let's talk righteous, and let's talk cult. This week's pick is a radioactive disaster piece that defined what it means to be a BAMF classic. The year is 1984. Reagan is in office, VHS is thriving, and Troma Studios says, you know what this world needs? A janitor who falls into toxic waste and beats criminals with a mop. And you know what? They were absolutely right. It is exactly what we needed. So what is the Toxic Avenger all about? Well, Toxic Avenger is about a nerd named Melvin, who is a pure dweeb. I mean, painfully annoying. And he works at a health club as a janitor. And his social skills are the equivalent of a wet napkin. Now, I know that I've kind of just been talking down about Melvin, but, you know, you kind of feel for the guy. He is bullied by a group of gym psychopaths who are so cartoonishly evil. They make Cobra Kai and any Billy Zabka character look like he is part of a church choir. This all gets put into a big prank that these kids want to pull on Melvin. And they are terribly mean to him and set this prank up that just goes too far. And Melvin crashes through a window and lands into a barrel of toxic waste. And because, of course, there's toxic waste just sitting around in New Jersey, this is just something that I guess happened in the 80s. Well, cue the transformation. The dude spontaneously combusts into fire, runs down the street, and people are kind of still laughing at him. And he mutates into a hideously deformed creature of superhuman size and strength. A muscle-bound monster with a heart of gold and a face like microwaved clay. He becomes the Toxic Avenger. And folks, he mops the floor with crime. Literally. No, he really does. I mean, he kicks the shit out of these bad guys, evil guys, anybody who is just a villain. the Toxic Avenger knows this and goes after them. So, why is this movie a BAMF classic? Why is this a movie that I recommend to pretty much anybody who meets me for the first time and I say, you want to watch a great movie, you got to watch Toxic Avenger? Well, let's see. The acting is over the top. It's crazy, and the characters are crazy because they, as I said, they are cartoonish kind of characters. They're meant to be over the top. You're not supposed to take this movie seriously. And another thing that's great about this movie are the practical effects. The head crushing scene. There's actually multiple head crushing scenes in this movie, and the um, way that it's done, it stays with you actually, and then you kind of find out that they just put a bunch of red food coloring and some fruit salad or whatever it is into a melon head and had the car run it over with a wig on it. Um, and you're like, wow, I can't believe they did that. That's really cool. Um, and when that scene happens, these gym bullies are like acting like you know it's no big deal, and it's a satire of a movie. Um, and, with these jokes of oh, I have to go to church tomorrow, like after they just murdered this kid in the street. The tonal shifts of this movie is that 1 minute it's blood-soaked vengeance, and the next it's like watching Looney Tunes on acid. And you know what? It kind of works. Is it low budget? Yes, it is. Is it bad taste? Yes, the entire menu is full of bad taste. But is it cult magic? Absolutely. It's certified, stamped, and dripping with green goo of just badass cult nostalgia. So, little things that happened with the Toxic Avenger is that really it wasn't really shown in many places, but it definitely found a life in a cult classic on VHS. I mean, we all rented this movie in the 80s and the 90s and brought it over to those sleepovers and we're like, you gotta watch this movie. But, like, the movie itself, some drive ins refused to show it. And it wasn't because of the violence, or wasn't even because of the nudity. It was just because it was too weird. Um, yeah, weird. So just I don't know. Imagine that. But anyway, but this was one of those movies that you would rent on a Friday night and you would bring it over to your friend's house and you would say, "I got a badass movie. We're gonna watch this movie." So, as I said, the special effects and everything in this movie are are crazy. They're out of control. The things that Toxie does to these bad guys is very over the top and very violent, but the way that it's done, and as I said, with a small, tiny budget, it really is a good job. Uh, so it's a movie that we talk about a lot here at the BAMF Video Store. The Toxic Avenger is like if Spider Man was dropped in Chernobyl, raised on Grindhouse Cinema, and had zero time for subtlety. He's mutated mop wielding icon of VHS vengeance, and he's ours. And that's really true. That's something that I totally agree with. I think that if you are going to be a fan of the BAMF Video Store, and the BAMF podcast and BAMF on TikTok and BAMF anywhere that BAMF is around, know that that's what you're getting into. If for my very first recommendation that I'll give you through the actual BAMF official BAMF podcast is going to be Toxic Avenger, um, it's it's just kind of like I said, it's what you're getting into. If you've never seen the Toxic Avenger, it is now time. This is a badass movie. This is the Radioactive beating heart of the BAMF culture. It's sleazy, it's savage, and it's strangely sincere. There is actually a very nice love story that happens in Toxic Avenger that I don't think a lot of people talk about. And again, that's why it's my very first cult pick of the BAMF podcast. Welcome back. So, we're going to jump into a segment that I do on this show, that I want to do on this show, and continue to do on this show, called the Late Fee Confessional. It's going to be a sacred place where we can air our analog sins, a place where overdue tapes, snack bar secrets, and behind the counter clerk trauma live on in full frame glory. So I'm going to start and I'm going to rewind things and go back to where this all began. Kind of my origin story. I guess every hero needs one. Some get bitten by radioactive spiders. Me, I got stuck behind the counter of the most badass video store in the Hudson Valley, in America, in the world, in the summer of 1997. The store was called Chelsea Video. It was a small store in Rhinebeck, New York, and I had just turned 16 and was basically told that I needed to work there. Now, the reason for that is because I hung out there all day long. I lived across the street from it, and I kind of lived in a pretty kind of cool area where I had everything that I needed in basically 1 square mile. I had a grocery store, I had a department store, I had a pizza place, a Chinese place, a video store, and a comic and bookstore. Not to mention that my best friend lived right down the road from me, and my best friend's brother also worked in the video store. And my best friend Joe got a job working there with his brother Mike. And I would hang out at that video store, as I said, all day and all night. The store closed at 10 o'clock, and I was there most nights, closing the store down with Mike and then walking back home across the street. It was a perfect time growing up. Um, I really, really found my love for movies at that video store. I rented anything and everything that I possibly could from that video store, brought it home. I would grab a pizza, I grabbed Chinese food. Oh, yeah, and I forgot to mention, my parents ran a hamburger and ice cream stand while I was growing up, and I lived right next door to that as well. So in the spring, summer months, I could go over and get, a hamburger, an ice cream, milkshake, something like that, and bring it back over. Yeah, I was always a fat kid. So, anyway, back to the video store. I was there all the time. And when the video store got busy, I would help Mike and I would put the videotapes that people were returning away back on the shelves. And I pretty much knew where every movie was in that store. I spent so much time in there. Probably why I became like a manager of inventory control, in which I do now in my real life. And that was all due to the fact that I could memorize, where every single tape was in that store. If someone was looking for something, I could go and grab it real quick and give it to them. I could tell them exactly where it was. I wasn't good at knowing the numbers of the tapes, but I could definitely tell you the location and the shelf that it was on. And putting those tapes away for Mike helped him when the store got busy. Until finally, Tammy and Wendy, who owned the store, said, "We need somebody for a Saturday night and somebody to come in midday on Sunday." Kind of a night and day shift that nobody really wanted. So they said, why don't you just give the kid the job? He's in here all the time. And they did. They gave me the job, and I started working at the video store. It was great. Being a 16-year-old kid and working at mom and dad's ice cream and hamburger stand during the day, and then going and working at the video store at night, it really was a great, great time. And as I said, I was able to really start finding movies that I never had probably thought about watching or ever wanted to watch. If I didn't work there, I probably would not be the Sideburnzombie that I am today if it wasn't for working in that video store and being friends with Joe and, Mike, and fast forward the tape a little bit and marrying their sister, who had always been my best friend since kindergarten, and is still my wife today. So I owe a lot to the video store, and that's probably one of the reasons that I keep it so close to my heart. So that is a late fee confessional of the Sideburn Zombie, because I was just a kid who had long sideburns. It was one of the things I could do, is grow sideburns. Could not and still cannot grow a mustache. But sideburns were always something that I could grow. And in the 90s, they kind of were making a comeback. And the zombie thing is because I love zombie movies. Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, all of those movies. Dead Alive or Brain Dead, whatever we're calling it. Loved Resident Evil video games. I was very obsessed with zombies at that time. Movies like Toxic Avenger that we spoke about earlier, and probably one of my favorite movies at the time, and still one of my favorite movies today is The Evil Dead. It was a movie that absolutely positively love. So let me know if you have a story of your own. The late fee confessional is always open. Don't expect any kind of break on that late fee. You're going to pay it. But, maybe if you're cool, we'll give you a couple store credits. So let me know. You got a story of your own? You got a late fee that you didn't pay? You still got that copy of Showgirls you didn't return? Any kind of story that you have. Maybe you worked in a video store. Maybe you just went to the video store all the time and you just have those memories. Drop a line in the comment or send me over an email, which is in the show notes. I'd love to hear from you, and I'll read it here on the show. And we'll have a laugh over it, because, as I said, growing up and basically living in a video store for my teenage years was one of the best times in my life. Not to say that I'm not having best times now, but it's definitely the most nostalgic. I feel the most nostalgic over that. So yeah, let me know, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to the BAMF Podcast. So now I got to bring you guys into the static zone. That place between channels, that fuzzy space where the truth gets warped, weird, and maybe a little radioactive today. And that's why I want to continue talking about the Toxic Avenger. But this, I want to kind of dive into it a little bit more and tell you why I think that the Toxic Avenger still matters. That Toxie is still very much alive today. That, yes, I understand that the Toxic Avenger is gross and it's juvenile and it has the cinematic polish of a greasy grill at my parents' old hamburger stand. But it's also that punk filmmaking, that anarchist filmmaking in its purest form. Toxie isn't just a mutated janitor. He is basically a middle finger to the idea that heroes have to be pretty, polite, and just be that superhero formula that we constantly get these days. He's vengeance, but with a limp. He's justice, but he has acne scars. You know, a reminder that sometimes the only thing standing between innocence and oblivion is a mop and a man who's had enough. And Toxie can't help it. His traumatons go crazy, and he has to go and fight evil. And the, speaking of all of that, like the Toxic Avenger was made by outsiders for outsiders. The film was made with duct tape and delusion, and it never apologized for what it was. Today, in a world where everything is AI smooth, 4K upscale, and test marketed to death, Toxie reminds us that the best stories sometimes come from that green ooze that Toxie pisses out in the alleyway. Troma didn't just make movies, they made a statement. And that statement was, you don't need permission to create. Make your own damn movie. All you need is a camera, a weird idea, and maybe a bucket of fake blood that might stain your shoes forever. You're going to have to throw those away. So, yeah, the Toxic Avenger still matters because it's not about how good the movie looks or about how the actors are acting and stuff in the movie. It's about taking power back, about standing up when you've been dumped on, literally and figuratively, and about not wanting for someone to hand you a cape. You want to save the world? Sometimes you got to dig through the trash, pick up that mop, and just get messy. So that is just something I just wanted to deep dive into, and let's let you know that that's why the Toxic Avenger still matters to me. And I hope that that's why the Toxic Avenger still does that for you. I don't know. It's different. It's definitely acquired taste. It's definitely the Twinkie Wiener sandwich of movies. It's really good, but people are going to look at you weird. And that's all we got for today, folks. I want to thank you so much for stopping by and listening to me just talk into the ether. The very first BAMF podcast is here, and it's in the books, and it's all done for you. From Radioactive, Mop Justice to late fee flashbacks and the gospel according to Troma, we've officially kicked off the BAMF podcast. And I want to thank you for being here again. If the Toxic Avenger taught us anything, it's this. You don't need a Hollywood budget to be a hero. You just need guts, a weird idea, and maybe a face only a mother or the midnight movie crowd could love. So, what we're doing over on a TikTok is we are doing the VHS Summer video hits of the summer, that is. And I'm going to be recommending movies over there that are those movies you went into the video store and you rented every single week. The summer vacation wasn't that long, but you would still rent that movie 20 times over that summer vacation. And these are going to be the movies that I'm going to be recommending to you that's going to spark that nostalgia and just, make you feel good over the hot summer. So, if you like what you heard, give us a follow, a rating, you can give us a review, or you can just whisper sweet nothings into your nearest VCR. Yeah, we hear those things too. So, if you got a movie that you want covered, or you got a weird VHS memory, you got a copy of Surf Nazis Must Die that won't stop appearing in your dreams, send in something. Send in a comment. Send in a letter. Send in a picture. I don't care. Whatever you want. We will read it here on air. We'll post it on a still cam. And just know that the Rewind cult is listening. So, until next time, let's rewind and be kind.